What's up, everyone, and welcome to the weekly Q&A, and happy May the 4th week. Real quick before questions, we have to send a shout-out and a thank you to Ken Wood, who joined our Patreon at the Jedi Council level this past week. Thank you so much, Ken. What a time to do it. Exciting times for Star Wars right now, but thank you.
For our first question, Jane Dalton asks how the Bad Batch knew Cut Lawquane and seemed to know him very well.
That was like the first thing Molly said after the episode. It was like, good episode. When did they meet? Because it seems like Cut's supposed to be really good at laying low.
Yeah, I mean, I assumed it would just, they just came across him on a mission or something, but like, Wrecker came in, like old Uncle Wrecker, like, he was like playing with the kids and they seemed pretty comfortable with him, so I was like, I want to know more about how they met. Right.
My first thought was maybe Rex told them during the Bad Batch arc, but I'm like, no, that's near the end of the Clone Wars. And they, like you said, clearly have, I would say, maybe more of a relationship with Cut than Rex did. He was just like, I'll keep your secret, goodbye. It seemed like they came around every so often. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I guess the only thing that I have is when Wrecker comes home in the first episode, he's like, I'll put the marks on the wall. And he's like, here are all the new missions we just completed. And they had tons and tons of completed missions. So who knows what they've been doing and where they were sent. And at some point, they must have had a mission on Seleucami. And they came across this guy and they were like, hey, he's kind of like us. And that he's a little bit different from the other clones. More of an independent thinker. Yeah. So they bonded.
Yeah, I guess all the different clones maybe stick together and help keep each other's secrets. And, you know.
I completely agree with you, though. I wish there were, like, some line somehow to explain how they first met up. Maybe they'll say something in the episode guide when it comes out on StarWars.com. Because I could see them knowing that we would have this question, but it's just like maybe they didn't want to take the time, because you don't have to know. We just want to know.
Lorenz Markov wants to know if we could see a clone rebellion or infighting at some point in the Bad Batch.
This is one of my favorite little things that they have potentially teased. It doesn't have to go that way, but everything with the Kaminoans in the first episode, I'm like, yeah, what are they up to? What are they going to do?
I never know what they're doing.
I never know what they're doing out there in Kamino, out past the Rishi maze.
Do you think that they could have the ability to turn off all the chips in the clones?
Or affect them more.
Yeah.
I think I saw this on Reddit, but I said in my review that, yeah, maybe they can put another order out, and then someone on Reddit was like, what if it's Order 99? I was like, oh, ooh, that's kind of cool. Because not only is it, 99 for Task Force 99, but it also flips Order 66 on its head, literally. I'm like, I like that.
That's a little too on the nose for me, but
whatever.
I mean, I think it would be really cool to see some kind of uprising, because we don't know what happens to all the clones.
Yep. I think it makes perfect sense to do away with the Kaminoans. I don't see it going well for them. It's basically what went down in Legends as well. Mm-hmm. They might try to attack the Empire. They definitely don't seem enthused about what's going on right now.
Yeah, you'd think that the Kaminoans and their technology would still be around by the time we see the end of Mandalorian, and it doesn't look like they're doing too hot with the cloning.
Right.
So I doubt the Kaminoans are around at that point, or maybe they're in hiding. I don't know.
I think it makes perfect sense that, the Empire had to destroy Kamino or the cloning facilities or something, and now they're like, okay, well, we have no idea what we're doing, and we're just doing our best.
Speaking of, Derek Horkel asks, when is the latest appearance of a Kaminoan in the Star Wars timeline?
You like how I did that, where it's just this question feeds into the next one.
I do.
And it's a great question, and the most recent one in memory is that they show up in Pirate's Price. Just a couple of them. Yeah. So it's a story about Hondo, and he's telling a story like in the sequel era, but the story actually takes place like back when Alden, Han Solo, young Han Solo, and Chewbacca were running around. So like 5-ish years before A New Hope. But yeah.
after the events of Solo.
Yes.
Okay.
So Hondo runs into some Kaminoans, and all he really says is that, you don't see them around too often these days. Not that you saw them around very often otherwise. They tended to keep to themselves.
Were they on Kamino?
No.
So, yeah, I think he may have been referring to just the fact that they were not on Kamino, but yeah.
I have Pirate's Price somewhere. I was looking for it.
that could give us an idea of maybe they didn't get totally wiped out. Yeah. But I don't know. If anyone would know, Hondo would probably know.
He didn't seem to know, like, oh yeah, they were wiped out. And I guess even if maybe Lou Anders, who wrote that story, maybe he was told, yeah, the Kaminoans aren't really around anymore, but don't get into that because we're gonna cover that. Because like if you look at the concept art they've released so far for these episodes, they were made like back in 2019, which means they were working on this show before that. I've heard that they've been working on it since before Rebels. I don't know if that's true or not. Or
I saw some stuff from 2017.
Okay, yeah.
Some concept art, so it's been a while.
Yeah, like they've had this idea for a long time, and we're finally getting to see it. So yeah, I could see there being some big galactic implications here.
Ben wants to know if there's any hope for redemption for Crosshair.
Yeah, I think so.
It's Star Wars. There's always hope for redemption.
Yes, that's true. If Kylo Ren and Darth Vader can be redeemed, certainly Crosshair can. But more than that, the thing Omega says in the first episode, it's not your fault. Like, we can see that his chip was already kind of going off, and then they just amplified it. So he is not fully himself.
Yeah, speaking of what we mentioned earlier about the uprising and, if something were to happen to all the chips, maybe they, get back to Kamino and somehow are able to turn his chip back down.
Right.
Or, they knock him out and they just take it out of his head. I don't know. I don't know that, well, Omega said she was a medical assistant, so she might have some surgical skills.
Yeah. I was surprised that so Rex knows about the chips, was talking about them with Cut. Like, I was surprised that they didn't remove Cut's chip, but maybe it's not as simple as that. I don't know. And yeah, maybe we will see. It would be nice, although I could still see this ending very tragically, but it would be nice if all of the clones by the end of the series somehow got their actual personalities back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been wanting to see just a random clone show up in something like The Mandalorian, just living his life. And, maybe they don't even address it, but Tamira Morrison is already around, so it would just be really cool to like have a clone be running a bar somewhere on some random planet, and he's got all these crazy stories he can tell, and I don't know.
Bring back Kix. I want Kix so bad. Mm-hmm. I want to know what happened to him during all this while he was in stasis. Probably nothing. It seems like nothing in his one story, but I've also seen someone throw out the idea, just the way that they've handled the transition from clone trooper to basically stormtrooper so well. And it's like, what if at one point a seemingly nameless trooper gets killed or shot, and then like we find out it was Boyle or someone that we know, like how tragic that would be.
Yeah. This show's going to get dark.
I think it will.
So it's definitely possible. Brandon Madigan asks if the Bad Batch will survive their own series. Speaking of getting dark.
Right.
Is this going to be a Rogue One situation?
I want to say no. I think it'll be more of a Rebels situation where they probably won't all survive, but most of them will. Like, everyone always gets into this question, like, who's going to live, who's going to die, and I think for the most part, Star Wars tends to have more hopeful, happy endings. Not all the time. Revenge of the Sith is a clear outlier, but it still ends on a hopeful note.
Yeah, I mentioned this the other day about how sad it would be if Echo ended up not surviving the show because of just all that he's been through. But I don't know if they're all going to survive. I could see a couple of them going out, in order to save Omega or, one of the others.
Yeah.
I don't want to just write Crosshair off because he's defected and, his chip and everything. I don't want to just say he'll probably die because he's the only one that is a bad guy now, but it's a possibility.
I agree. I mean, just because he is a bad guy, like, it's not his fault and all that, so I'm hopeful that they will realize that and try to find a way to get their brother back instead of, just writing him off. But I can see it happening either way because I'm like, why aren't they on that ATTE in Star Wars Rebels? That doesn't have to mean anything. Just because we never see them again doesn't mean they're all dead. It's the same thing with like Ahsoka and Ezra. Everyone always assumes the worst, but it probably won't be that bad, I hope.
Yeah, I still just really hope we see a clone, maybe one of the Bad Batch, pop up in another show somewhere. Probably not the Boba Fett one because Tamira Morrison would have to be playing a lot of parts there. But
I think that would start to get confusing to I want to start...
Maybe the Ahsoka series?
I want to start calling, like sometimes I say, like the more casual audience, like my parents, I want to start calling them regs. I think... I think if you start getting Tamira Morrison in too many roles in the same show, the regs will start being like, what's happening? Because my parents aren't watching The Bad Batch.
No. We did call them normies for a bit, but that seems...
That's a little
harsh.
Little condescending. Regs is still condescending, but at least it's within the universe. That's it for patron questions. If you're a patron and you didn't see your question answered here, just head over to Patreon where we left you a written response. If you're not a patron, you can learn more by following the link in the description. Just $1 a month will get you access to extra Star Wars Explained content like audio commentaries for the films, and we're doing audio commentaries for The Bad Batch right now. We're going to take a break from the Clone Wars for the next 16 weeks, so the first episode, that commentary is out right now if you're interested.
On to YouTube questions. TARDIS Guy 123 asks if we could see a major retcon like Asajj Ventress appearing in The Bad Batch to conclude her story on screen.
And this is basically coming off of the heels of like the Kanan thing, where there were some changes made to that story. I hesitate to call that a straight up retcon. It's definitely different. I did a whole video on that. I'm not going to get into it, where it's like, yes, it frustrated me, but broad strokes, it's all the same. Bringing a character back from the dead, that's a step too far, I think.
Yeah, the example that they give, like bringing Asajj in so that we can get closure on her story on screen, that's, I feel like, too big of a step. Like the Kanan thing, like you said, it still worked in, the
broad strokes.
Broad strokes.
That's the term I keep using.
It still worked, but they tweaked a few things here and there to make it work for the Bad Batch. I don't see them bringing Asajj in just to get a conclusion for her. If anything, she might get her own like little mini series, basically animated Dark Disciple.
That makes so much more sense to me. That if they want to provide closure for some of these Clone Wars things, then maybe Disney saw how wild people went for the last season of the Clone Wars, and they're like, hey, we've got some of these arcs. The Dark Disciple arc is like, I think it was going to be like 7 episodes long. It was going to be a big one. And they put it in the animatics mode or whatever. Like, you can see some of the rough animations for it. They had started work on it, finished that up. Yes, I think that's worth doing. And, they might tweak some things here and there, just like the Siege of Mandalore got changed. But I absolutely think that would be worth doing. Fun to see. Son of Dathomir as well, which it would have to have some adaptation to it because the Siege of Mandalore made changes to it already.
I mean, I feel like people might be a little more understanding if it's Dave Filoni making changes to Dave Filoni's things that he made.
It's
himself.
Also Lucas. I mean,
Yeah.
Dark Disciple, anything from the Clone Wars had George Lucas's hands on it. And I think Amanda Lucas wrote the scripts for Dark Disciple. It was Amanda or Katie. I can't recall. But, like, there's 2 Lucases worked on the Dark Disciple arc.
Ryan Minson wants to know if Crosshair could be like the first Death Trooper. I love this theory.
That's why I included the question.
I love this theory because, you know, the Death Troopers, up until Rebels, they were kind of made out to be really scary, and we weren't sure, like, their helmets were really slim, and they were, like, a lot slimmer, and it was
taller.
Yeah, and they had that, like, garbled speech or whatever, how they communicated. They were kind of made out to be like, are those humans? Are they robots? I don't know.
Even
robots.
the visual dictionary
Droids.
kind of hints that there is something, there's augmentations. You can see in Rogue One, like, they move very robotically sometimes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they've got a creepy vibe to them.
I mean, but Rebels then gave them voices and then
Made them less scary because they were basically just stormtroopers.
yeah. But I love the idea of Tarkin seeing what Crosshair is and what he can do and modeling the Death Troopers after him because he has a slimmer physique and his helmet looks a little bit like the Death Trooper helmet. I don't know.
I mean, the
dig
action
that theory.
figure is called, like, Elite Imperial Trooper. So I think that kind of like the way we saw the precursor for the DT Sentry droid, I think it makes perfect sense for Crosshair to be kind of like the proto Death Trooper before they took it into marketing and really figured out what the name was going to be.
Yeah.
They're like, we'll just call him Elite for now.
Although, do you think we'll see Krennic at all in the Bad Batch? Because I feel like the Death Troopers were more Krennic's thing than Tarkin's. So maybe that would be a Krennic idea.
That's only because they were introduced for Rogue One and they were always following Krennic around. Again, we're talking like reference books, visual dictionaries said that Death Troopers were assigned to anyone that was part of the Tarkin initiative. So I'd say they're as affiliated with Tarkin. I hadn't really thought about Krennic in the Bad Batch, but yeah, he's around. Why not?
Throw that cape in there.
Yeah.
Phantom Jedi asks why Anakin didn't tell anyone about Exegol after he died and became one with the Force. Yeah, it's just the Force ghosts, they're keeping a lot of information tucked away that would have been helpful. But I don't know.
I think I have an okay answer for this. And yeah, we're talking about now the Darth Vader comic that shows Vader going to Exegol. He sees the hand, he sees maybe what's going to become the Praetorian Guards and maybe what's going to become Snoke. He definitely sees all of the Star Destroyers under construction. So why did that seem like such a surprise in The Rise of Skywalker? We don't know that he didn't tell Luke. That Anakin wasn't like, hey, thanks for saving my soul. Check out this place called Exegol.
Right, because, I mean, they did find out that Luke was trying to find Exegol, and it was just kind of like that line of Pisana where his trail went cold or something like that. So, yeah, there's a possibility that he knew.
That's kind of what I'm going to go with. Other than that, I would say that Force Ghosts exist kind of outside of space and time. So, like, Anakin might have this knowledge of, I can't say anything. Mm-hmm. Like, that's how the galaxy is saved. He knows when he's supposed to and when he's not supposed to talk. Like, this is all kind of coming from the Qui-Gon story and from a certain point of view where he's almost annoyed that he has to go talk to Obi-Wan because, like, being one with the Force is, like, bliss. It's Force heaven. And no one wants to be like, okay, let me go back down to, like, give advice. No, you want to stay in eternal bliss.
Yeah.
And so they only do it when they have to.
Yeah, it's like the idea of divine intervention is probably not frowned upon in Force heaven, but, like, I feel like the Force itself would be like, No, you can't. You can't bend the rules by just going and telling people what to do. They got to figure it out on their own because they have this whole story to live out.
Right. Like I just yeah, you're part of the cosmic force, and as that kind of entity, I assume you know when it is right to intervene and when it is wrong. Whatever is best to restore balance. The force works in mysterious ways.
It sure does.
That's all the time we have for questions today. If you want to leave a question for next week's video, just put it in the comments below or sign up for Patreon to join our weekly Q&A discussion. If you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the channel.
Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitch.
And as always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.